Hello and welcome to Park County. My name is Kurt Lanzone. I'm the Purdue Ag and Natural Resources educator in Park County, and I want to welcome you to the sugar bush. Now, people look at you kind of funny if you refer to something as a sugar bush. What we refer to our sugar bush is our grove of maple trees. In our case, it's the sugar maple trees that we have on our property, where we go through and tap those and make maple syrup from. We're going to take you through this whole process in this video series and program and help you understand how we go about the process and how we make it happen. I want to thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy it. One of the things we look for when we're identifying our maple trees that we're going to tap is that they have opposite branching. And what I mean by that, anywhere you see on here, on this branch, it's going to have opposite branching coming out from each other. So you can see right here is a good example of opposite branching. That's one way to identify a true maple tree while you're out in the woods. There's two other trees that also have opposite branching, ash trees and dogwood trees, which are very common in Indiana as well. The dogwoods aren't going to be usually a big enough diameter to even think about guessing with a maple tree, and the ash trees are going to be a totally different lighter bark color that we'll show you here after a bit. One of the things that we look for though is this opposite branching. If you're tapping mature maple trees, one thing you can take with you to the woods if you're not real familiar is a set of binoculars, and you can look up in the crowns and look for that opposite branching and look for those branches across from each other. Look here at just an example of a sassafras tree, and we can see that it's not opposite of each other, it's alternate. You know, they're not right across from each other. So we know that those trees are not ones that we want to even consider tapping. Another member of the maple family that can be tapped, but is not readily tapped in Park County because of how fast it turns to what they call a buddy sap, and we'll go over that here after a bit, is the silver maple or the red maples. They are the softer maples compared to the sugar maples and the black maples. We see a lot of them in the woods. They have very fast growth, and one way to identify those is just by simply the bark that peels away like this. In a lot of areas in the country, they will tap those trees and use those, but in Indiana it's not as common because of how fast our seasons change, and the sap can turn buddy, which means the tree's budded out and the temperature's gotten too warm, and it can give a real off taste and bitter taste to the sap as it's boiled down. A lot of people in Indiana, like I said, don't mess with these trees. A good way to identify those, they do have the opposite branching, just like what the sugar and the black maples do, but this bark that flips off real easy. That's how you tell. So one of the other trees that we were talking about that has opposite branching is an ash tree. We see more and more that our ash trees are being attacked by the emerald ash borers, so some of the woodlots that have ash trees in them are starting to see them disappear or degrade rapidly. One of the management strategies for those is to go ahead and mark those and take them out while they're still harvestable timber. When we're looking through the woods for our opposite branching, trying to identify trees that we're going to tap, we're going to run into some ash trees. As you can see, it has a lot grainier bark that is a lot looser than what the maples are. I can flake it off a lot more easily than what I can with the maple trees. That's one of the big identifiers that we can distinguish it from a maple, and it's not going to have as tight a pattern as what some of the maple trees are going to have. The other thing, when we look at an ash tree, it's not going to have much lower branching. When we look at a maple tree, there's quite a bit of lower branching that can occur in those. But as we're walking through the woods looking for opposite branching, you know, we're going to identify those ash trees. After we've gone through and identified what trees we're going to tap, one of the key things that a lot of people have to figure out is when to tap their trees. We start looking for days where we get above freezing and the nights we go back below freezing. Nice 40-degree days really make the sap run when it gets back cooler in the evening. And how that process works is, as it warms up, the tree thaws out and it builds pressure, and it comes out these little taps that we've put in. One of the things that people can get concerned about is tapping too early. If the temperature's right and you see a good stretch, a lot of times weather-wise, it's going to lead to a good run of sap. If we were worried about dry socket or dry taps, that can be a concern. One of the things that creates that is actually microorganisms and bacteria that get in there in the cellular level, and they'll stop up those pores, those cells that we're trying to get the sap through. One of the things that University of New Hampshire worked on was a research project where they tapped early trees and late trees and normal time for trees, and one thing that they found out is no matter when you tap the tree, it's going to yield about the same amount of sap, regardless of when you tapped it. The thing during the early season, it seems we get a lot clearer sap that has a lot less contaminants in it that actually make the syrup darker and darker amber color, so it grades tougher. And the later we go in the season, it seems we get more of those impurities in there that makes the sap grade at a lower level. So don't be afraid to tap about any time you can see the weather is going to change, and we're going to have those days where we get good freeze and thaw. After we've gone through and marked some of our trees and know where we're going to tap in our woods, one of the things that we can do is get a Doyle stick and go through and make sure how many taps we're going to put in that tree. We're not going to tap trees that are under 10-inch diameter. This has got it marked right here where we can just line it up at breast height, or about 4.5 foot. And we can see this one's about 14-inch diameter. Another good rule is just taking your fingers like this and putting them apart, and they're going to show about 9 inches diameter. So if I go up here and put my hand on the tree like that, I know that it's a good tree that I can go through and tap. Some of the supplies that we can use, more traditional stuff, is the old bucket and spout or spigot. And most of the spigot ones are going to take a 7/16 inch drill bit, and we're going to drill in the tree about 2.25 inches, 2.5 inches depth, and then we're going to tap it in, and then we're going to set up all of our buckets. That way we can collect the sap. This one's got a lid for it, so it helps protect from leaves and debris and bark falling in. Pretty simple process though. We'll go through. And you run out of battery juice. After we get it drilled, we can check our depth. We can use a twig to help clean it out. Get all the little shavings that we had in there. Just make sure it's gonna flow good for you. And then we can mark it. And if you didn't have your drill bit marked, you can check it. We're about 2.25 inches right there. So we can see it's already running, which is a good thing. We take our tap and we're going to tap it in place. And we can hear the resonance from tapping change. The sound, we can hear it change to more of a thud.
Now the tap will come out right.
And we want to just tap it down a little bit after we get it in. That way this stuff's going to run and drip right off. Okay. Next we take our bucket. It's got a little hole here that our hook's going to hang on. And then the lid has a wire through it. And it's going to run through here. And then snap into place. And then that covers it, protects it from more stuff falling in it. And we can look in there and we've got sap starting to run already. So
Can I see your bag?
hear the sound change?
Too bad we can't have 3 food.